In 1994, a Kurdish shepherd named Shavak Yildiz was tending his flock in the hills of southeastern Turkey near the city of Şanlıurfa. He noticed something unusual protruding from the soil, a stone with a clear shape, carved edges, obvious signs of human work. He reported his finding to local authorities, who contacted the German Archaeological Institute. What followed was one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. The site that Shepherd stumbled upon is called Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill, in Turkish. Excavations revealed massive stone pillars arranged in circular enclosures, carved with detailed depictions of animals and abstract symbols. The structures were monumental, requiring coordinated labor from hundreds of people. The craftsmanship was sophisticated, the artistic vision clear, and the site was 12,000 years old. Göbekli Tepe was built around 9,600 BC during a period we call the Pre-Pottery Neolithic. This makes it roughly 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, 7,000 years older than the earliest Egyptian pyramids. It predates the invention of writing, pottery, and the wheel. When these pillars were erected, humans had not yet developed agriculture as we understand it. They had not built permanent settlements. According to everything we thought we knew about human history, they should not have been capable of creating something like this. But they did. Göbekli Tepe challenges fundamental assumptions about the development of human civilization. For decades, the standard model went like this. Humans domesticated plants and animals, which allowed them to settle in one place, which created surplus food, which freed some people to specialize in tasks other than food production, which eventually led to complex society, monumental architecture, and organized religion. Agriculture came first. Everything else followed. Göbekli Tepe suggests we had the sequence backward. Here we have monumental religious architecture, built by people who were still primarily hunter-gatherers. The temple, if that's what it is, came before the city. Ritual may have preceded agriculture. The need to gather for religious purposes may have been one of the driving forces that eventually led to settlement and farming, not the reverse. This site forces us to reconsider what early humans were capable of, what motivated them, and how civilization actually began. It shows us a world 12,000 years distant, a time when our ancestors were creating sacred spaces on a scale we never imagined possible. Göbekli Tepe was hiding in plain sight for decades before anyone recognized what it was. The site sits on a limestone plateau in the Germush mountain range, about 15 kilometers northeast of Şanlıurfa. The hill itself rises roughly 15 meters above the surrounding plain, and local people had known about it for generations. Farmers working the land occasionally found shaped stones, but these were assumed to be the remnants of a Byzantine cemetery. The hill's name, Potbelly Hill, came from its rounded shape, nothing more. In 1963, an archaeological survey team from Istanbul and the University of Chicago examined the site. They noted the presence of worked stone, but concluded it was indeed a medieval cemetery, nothing worth further investigation. The flint tools scattered across the surface suggested some prehistoric activity, but the team saw no reason to excavate. They moved on. The site remained largely ignored for 3 more decades. In 1994, when shepherd Shavak Yildiz reported the carved stones to authorities, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt was working on Neolithic sites in the region. Schmidt had been surveying the area as part of a broader project to understand early settlement patterns in southeastern Anatolia. When he received word about the stones at Gobekli Tepe, he travelled to the site to assess whether it warranted excavation. What Schmidt saw convinced him immediately. The stones were not grave markers. They were T-shaped pillars, some still partially buried, with carved reliefs of animals. The style and technique indicated extreme age. Schmidt recognized that this was not a cemetery, but something far older and more significant. He began excavations in 1995 under the auspices of the German Archaeological Institute and the Şanlıurfa Museum. The first season of excavation confirmed Schmidt's assessment. Beneath the surface soil lay circular stone enclosures, some measuring up to 30 meters in diameter. Within these enclosures stood massive T-shaped limestone pillars, arranged in rings. The pillars were not rough-hewn markers, but carefully shaped monoliths, some weighing up to 10 tons, with flat surfaces and precisely carved edges. Many bore carved reliefs of animals: foxes, boars, snakes, birds, gazelles, and others, rendered in startling detail. Schmidt's team used radiocarbon dating on organic materials found at the site. The results placed the main construction phase between 9,600 and 8,200 BC, firmly in the pre-pottery Neolithic A period. This was confirmed by subsequent dating of charcoal, bone, and other organic remains found in the fills and structures. The dates were consistent across multiple samples and multiple methods. There was no ambiguity. Göbekli Tepe was genuinely 12,000 years old. Schmidt directed excavations at Göbekli Tepe until his death in 2014. His work focused primarily on the southeastern portion of the hilltop, where geomagnetic surveys had indicated the densest concentration of buried structures. He adopted a conservative excavation strategy, working slowly and methodically, prioritizing documentation and preservation over speed. After Schmidt's death, excavations continued under the direction of Lee Clare and later Necmi Karul. The work remains ongoing, with teams from multiple institutions participating in the research. But here is the critical point. Despite nearly 3 decades of excavation, less than 5% of the site has been uncovered. Geophysical surveys using ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry reveal at least 20 circular enclosures still buried beneath the surface. The excavated structures, impressive as they are, represent only a fraction of what Göbekli Tepe contains. The hill covers roughly 9 hectares, and the buried architecture extends across most of that area. Full excavation would take generations and is not currently planned. The Turkish authorities and the excavation team have agreed to leave the majority of the site unexcavated, preserving it for future researchers with better techniques and technologies. What we know about Göbekli Tepe, then, comes from a small sample. The 4 main enclosures that have been substantially excavated, designated enclosures A, B, C, and D, provide our primary evidence. Enclosure D is the largest and best preserved, and it serves as the reference point for most interpretations of the site. The excavation strategy has focused on understanding these structures in detail rather than exposing the entire site. Schmidt and his successors prioritized careful stratigraphic analysis, studying the layers of fill and debris that accumulated in and around the enclosures. This approach has revealed that the site was used over an extended period, with multiple phases of construction, modification, and eventual burial. The method of burial is itself significant. Göbekli Tepe was not abandoned and left to decay. Around 8000 BC, the enclosures were filled with debris, broken stone tools, animal bones, and soil. The pillars were buried standing upright, carefully covered rather than toppled or destroyed. This was not vandalism or conquest. It was intentional preservation or ritual closure. The people who built Göbekli Tepe chose to bury their own creation. Why they did this remains unknown, but the act of burial is what preserved the site for 10,000 years, protecting the pillars and carvings from weathering and human interference. The excavation revealed no evidence of domestic habitation at Göbekli Tepe itself. There are no remains of houses, no hearths for cooking, no storage facilities, no trash middens typical of settlement sites. The animal bones found at the site come almost entirely from wild species: gazelle, aurochs, wild boar, wild sheep, and show evidence of butchering and feasting rather than daily meals. The stone tools are present in large numbers, but are primarily scrapers and blades for processing hides and cutting meat, not the full range of tools associated with permanent settlement. It was a place where they gathered. The implications of this became clear as excavation progressed. Here was monumental architecture on a massive scale, built by people who did not live at the site, who were not yet farming, who had no permanent villages in the immediate area. They came from elsewhere, worked on these structures, feasted, performed whatever rituals the site demanded, and then left. This pattern, of a central ritual site serving a dispersed population, had no parallel in the archaeological record of this period. Göbekli Tepe was not fitting into existing categories. It was something new, or rather something very old that we had never seen before. The site itself consists of circular stone enclosures, each containing massive T-shaped pillars arranged in concentric rings. The structures follow a consistent architectural plan, repeated across multiple enclosures with variations in size and detail. The basic layout is this. A central pair of large T-shaped pillars stands in the middle of each enclosure, surrounded by a ring of smaller, though still substantial, pillars embedded in low stone walls. The walls themselves are built from roughly shaped limestone blocks, creating a circular or oval perimeter. The floors are bedrock, smoothed and levelled but not paved. The enclosures are not roofed in the conventional sense, though some evidence suggests partial covering or shade structures may have existed. Enclosure D is the largest and best preserved example. It measures approximately 20 meters in diameter. Two central pillars stand over 5 meters tall and weigh an estimated 10 tons each. They are surrounded by a stone wall with 8 additional pillars built into it, each roughly 3 to 4 meters tall. The entire structure is sunk slightly below the original ground surface, accessed by a narrow stone-lined entrance on the southern side. The pillars themselves are the defining feature of Gobekli Tepe. They are carved from single blocks of limestone quarried from bedrock outcrops located on the plateau itself, roughly 100 meters from the main structures. The quarries show clear evidence of extraction. Rectangular trenches where blocks were cut free, channels where workers split the stone using wooden wedges, and half-finished pillars still attached to the bedrock. The T-shape is consistent across all pillars. A broad horizontal head sits atop a narrower vertical shaft, creating a form that is clearly anthropomorphic without being explicitly human. Some pillars have carved arms bent at the elbow, with hands meeting at the front, as if the pillar is a stylized human figure. Some have carved belts at waist height. A few have what appear to be loincloths or kilts. The implication is clear. These are not abstract markers. They represent beings, gods, ancestors, spirits, or some category we lack the vocabulary to describe. The carvings on the pillars depict animals, rendered in high and low relief with considerable skill. The most common animals are foxes, boars, snakes, and birds, particularly vultures and cranes. Gazelles, aurochs, wild sheep, and big cats also appear. Some carvings show insects, including scorpions and spiders. The artistic technique is sophisticated. The carvers used stone tools, flint and harder stone, to abrade and peck the limestone, creating smooth surfaces and sharp edges. Some carvings are fully three-dimensional, with animals projecting several centimeters from the surface. These are not crude scratchings. They are artistic statements by people who knew exactly what they were doing. One pillar in enclosure D, Pillar 43, often called the vulture stone, has attracted particular attention. Its surface is covered with carvings, a vulture with outstretched wings, a scorpion, a snake, a headless human figure, and a series of abstract symbols, including a circle that may represent the sun or moon. The composition is dense, almost crowded, as if multiple meanings or messages were layered onto a single surface. The vulture stone has been the subject of extensive interpretation. Some researchers argue it depicts astronomical constellations, suggesting the builders of Gobekli Tepe were tracking celestial events. Others see it as a narrative about death, with the vulture representing carrion birds that dispose of the dead. Still others caution against overinterpretation, noting that we have no way to know what these symbols meant to their creators. Other pillars show different combinations of animals. Some are dominated by snakes, carved in sinuous curves wrapping around the shaft. Some feature foxes in multiple poses. The selection of animals does not appear random. These species are not necessarily the most common in the local environment, nor the most important as food sources. Gazelle bones dominate the faunal remains at the site, yet gazelles are not the most frequently depicted animals. The choice of what to carve seems to have been driven by symbolic or religious criteria, not practical ones. In addition to animal carvings, some pillars have abstract symbols. H-shaped marks, nested crescents, circular forms, and geometric patterns. These symbols recur across multiple pillars and multiple enclosures, suggesting a consistent symbolic language or set of religious icons. We cannot read this language, but its existence is clear. The stone walls connecting the pillars are built from limestone blocks, some weighing several hundred kilograms. The blocks are not mortared, but fit together through careful shaping and placement. The walls are low, roughly 1 to 1.5 meters high, and would not have provided significant enclosure or defense. Their function seems to have been architectural, to define the space, to connect the pillars, and to create a bounded area distinct from the surroundings. The floors of the enclosures are smoothed bedrock, with some areas showing traces of plaster or lime surfacing. There are no post holes, no evidence of roof supports, no remains of wooden structures. If the enclosures were roofed, it would have required spanning large distances without internal supports, which is technically possible, but would have demanded sophisticated carpentry. The more likely scenario is that the enclosures were open to the sky or covered only with temporary materials, hides, mats, branches, that left no archaeological trace. Between and around the main enclosures are other architectural features: stone channels, small rectangular structures, stone-lined pits, and scattered worked stones. Some of these may be later additions, built during the centuries when Göbekli Tepe remained in use. Some may be auxiliary structures related to the main enclosures. The stratigraphic relationships are complex, and not all features have been fully excavated or interpreted. The construction of these structures required substantial labour. Moving a 10-ton pillar from the quarry to the enclosure, even over a distance of 100 metres, would have required dozens of people, along with ropes, levers, and sledges. Lifting the pillar upright and embedding it in a prepared socket in the bedrock would have required coordination, engineering knowledge, and significant effort. Carving the reliefs would have taken weeks or months per pillar. Building the stone walls, levelling the floors, and finishing the details would have added more labour. Estimates vary, but constructing a single enclosure like Enclosure D would have required several thousand person-hours of work. Multiply this by the 20 or more enclosures buried at the site, and the total labour investment becomes staggering. This was not the work of a few individuals or a single family. It required organised, sustained effort by a large group of people over an extended period. And these people accomplished all of this with Stone Age tools. There is no evidence of metal at Göbekli Tepe. The quarrying, shaping, carving, and construction were done using flint tools, stone hammers, and wooden implements. The builders worked limestone, which is relatively soft as stone goes, but the scale of the work and the precision of the carving are nonetheless impressive. The fact that this was possible, that people 12,000 years ago, without metal tools, without the wheel, without domesticated animals to haul loads, could create something like this, is itself significant. It demonstrates that the limiting factor in human achievement is not technology, but organisation and motivation. The builders of Göbekli Tepe had both. They also had a clear architectural vision. The enclosures are not identical, but they follow the same basic plan: circular layout, central pillars, surrounding ring of smaller pillars, low stone walls, specific orientation. This consistency suggests a shared design tradition, a set of rules or principles that governed how these structures should be built. Whoever directed the construction knew what they were trying to create, and they replicated that design multiple times across the site. The people who built the site left no written records, no images of themselves, no names. What we know about them comes entirely from the archaeological evidence, the tools they made, the animals they hunted, the structures they built, and the debris they left behind. They lived during the Pre-Pottery Neolithic A period, roughly 9,600 to 8,800 BC. This was the tail end of the last ice age and the beginning of the Holocene epoch, a time of climatic warming that transformed the environment of the Near East. The region around the site, southeastern Anatolia, northern Mesopotamia, the Levant, was becoming warmer and wetter. Forests expanded, game populations increased, wild grains grew in dense stands across the hills and valleys. These were optimal conditions for hunter-gatherers, and the people who built Göbekli Tepe were precisely that, mobile groups who hunted wild animals and gathered wild plants. They had not yet domesticated wheat or barley. They had not yet domesticated sheep, goats, or cattle. The faunal remains at the site are overwhelmingly from wild species. Gazelle makes up roughly 60% of the identified bones, followed by wild boar, wild sheep, aurochs, and red deer. These are all animals that could be hunted in the surrounding region. The bones show evidence of systematic butchering. Cut marks indicate the removal of meat from bone. Percussion marks show marrow extraction. The remains are concentrated in specific areas of the site, particularly in the fills of the enclosures, suggesting that feasting, consumption of large quantities of meat in a communal setting, was part of the activities at Gobekli Tepe. The plant remains tell a similar story. Charred seeds recovered from the site include wild einkorn wheat, wild barley, lentils, and various fruits and nuts. These are all species that grow naturally in the region and could be harvested without cultivation. There is no evidence of domesticated grain at the site during the main construction phase. Agriculture, in the sense of planting and harvesting of domesticated crops, had not yet begun. Yet these people were not simple or primitive. They were anatomically and cognitively identical to us. Their brains were the same size. Their capacity for abstract thought, symbolic reasoning, and social coordination was the same. The difference between them and us is not biological, but cultural and technological. They lacked metal, writing, and agriculture, but they possessed the same fundamental human capacities, and they used those capacities to organize labor on a massive scale. Building Gobekli Tepe required coordination among hundreds of people, quarrying the pillars, transporting them, erecting them, carving them, constructing the walls, preparing the feasts. All of this demanded planning, leadership, and cooperation. Someone had to make decisions: where to quarry, which stones to use, how to arrange the pillars, what animals to carve. Someone had to organize the labor. Someone had to maintain the effort over months or years until the work was complete. This implies social hierarchy, or at least recognized authority. Not necessarily kings or priests in the later sense, but individuals with sufficient status or charisma to mobilize labor and maintain cooperation. The feasting evidence supports this interpretation. The sheer quantity of animal bones at Gobekli Tepe, concentrated in specific deposits, suggests large gatherings where many people ate together. Feasting is a well-documented mechanism for building and maintaining social bonds, creating obligations, and demonstrating status. The person who provides the feast gains prestige. The participants incur a social debt. The event itself reinforces group identity and shared purpose. At Gobekli Tepe, feasting appears to have been central to the site's function. The enclosures may have been the settings for these communal meals, with meat roasted or boiled and consumed in a ritual context. The absence of permanent habitation supports this. People came to the site for specific events, stayed for days or weeks, feasted and worked and performed whatever rituals the site demanded, and then returned to their home territories. Where did they live when they were not at Göbekli Tepe? The evidence suggests small dispersed camps scattered across the region. Survey work in the surrounding area has identified numerous Neolithic sites, most of them small and ephemeral, representing temporary or seasonal camps. These groups were mobile, moving through the landscape following game and plant resources, but they maintained connections with each other and with Göbekli Tepe as a central gathering place. The region around the site is rich in resources. The hills support oak and pistachio forests, providing nuts and attracting game. The valleys have seasonal streams and natural springs, providing water. Wild wheat and barley grow densely in some areas. The environment could support a relatively high population of hunter-gatherers, much higher than the marginal environments where most ethnographically documented hunter-gatherers live today. Some researchers estimate that the population within a day's walk of the site, a radius of roughly 30 kilometers, could have been several hundred to a few thousand people organized into multiple bands or groups. These groups maintained their own territories and identities, but recognized Göbekli Tepe as a shared ritual center, a place where they gathered for communal events. The scale of labor required to build the site makes sense only if we assume participation from multiple groups. A single band of 30 to 50 people could not have moved 10-ton pillars or sustained construction over years or decades. But if several groups contributed labor periodically, gathering for a few weeks each year to work on the structures, feast, and perform rituals, then the project becomes feasible. This pattern has parallels in ethnographic accounts of monument building by tribal societies. Göbekli Tepe may represent an early example of this pattern, 12,000 years ago. The social implications are significant. These people were not living in a state of egalitarian simplicity. They had developed social hierarchies, recognized leaders, and the capacity for long-term planning and coordination. They were investing enormous effort in a project that had no immediate practical benefit: no defensive walls, no food storage, no shelter from the elements. The benefit was symbolic and social: the creation of a sacred space, the performance of rituals, the reinforcement of group identity, and the demonstration of collective capability. The stone tools found at Göbekli Tepe provide additional information about the builders. The assemblage is typical of the pre-pottery Neolithic A: flint blades, scrapers, burins, and points. The blades are often long and thin, struck from carefully prepared cores using a punch technique. The quality of the flint work is high, indicating skilled knappers. Some tools show evidence of hafting, attachment to wooden handles, allowing them to function as knives, axes, and chisels. The presence of obsidian is also notable. Obsidian, volcanic glass prized for its sharpness, does not occur naturally near Göbekli Tepe. The nearest sources are in central Anatolia, over 300 kilometers away. Yet obsidian tools and flakes are found at the site, indicating long-distance exchange networks. This contradicts the old image of Neolithic hunter-gatherers as isolated, self-sufficient bands. The people who built Göbekli Tepe were embedded in regional networks, exchanging goods, ideas, and probably people. They were part of a larger cultural world, one that extended across hundreds of kilometers and connected multiple communities. The absence of permanent settlement at Göbekli Tepe itself is striking. Despite decades of excavation, no houses have been found, no storage pits, no evidence of year-round occupation. The site was not a village or a town. It was a special place, set apart from daily life, visited periodically for specific purposes. This distinction between sacred space and living space is itself significant. It indicates that the builders of Göbekli Tepe had developed a conceptual separation between the mundane and the sacred, between ordinary life and ritual activity. They recognized certain places as different, requiring special treatment and special structures. The burial of the enclosures around 8000 BC adds another layer to this picture. The decision to fill the structures with debris and cover them was not forced by conquest or disaster. The work was done carefully, almost reverently. The pillars were left standing. The carvings were preserved. This suggests a planned closure, perhaps as part of a ritual cycle or a shift in religious practice. Why would people abandon and bury a site they had invested so much effort in creating? We do not know. But the act itself tells us something important. These people had agency, intentionality, and the capacity to make collective decisions about their sacred spaces. They were not passively responding to external forces. They were actively shaping their religious and social world. The people who built Göbekli Tepe were hunter-gatherers, but they were complex, organized, and capable of monumental projects. They had social hierarchies, long-distance connections, and a rich symbolic and religious life. They were, in every meaningful sense, fully human, creative, ambitious, and driven by more than mere survival. What was Göbekli Tepe for? Why did people build it? What happened there? These questions have no definitive answers. The site itself does not explain its purpose. The pillars do not come with labels. The enclosures do not include instruction manuals. We are left to interpret physical evidence and make inferences based on comparative data from other times and places. The most common interpretation, advanced by Klaus Schmidt and widely accepted by subsequent researchers, is that Göbekli Tepe was a ritual center, a temple or sanctuary where religious ceremonies took place. The term temple is used cautiously, acknowledging that we are projecting modern religious categories onto a context where they may not apply. But the basic argument is sound. The site was not practical, not defensive, not residential. It was a place set apart for interaction with the sacred. Several lines of evidence support this interpretation. First, the absence of domestic features. There are no houses, no hearths for daily cooking, no storage facilities, no trash pits filled with the debris of everyday life. The animal bones found at the site come from feasting contexts, not routine meals. The architecture itself, circular enclosures with massive carved pillars, has no practical function. These are not shelters. They are not workshops. They are stage settings for something else. Second, the iconography. The carvings on the pillars depict animals that had symbolic significance. The selection is not random. Certain species, foxes, boars, snakes, vultures, appear repeatedly, while others that were common in the environment or important as food are underrepresented. This suggests the animals were chosen for their symbolic or mythological associations, not their economic importance. The pillars themselves, shaped like stylized human figures, suggest representations of beings, ancestors, gods, spirits, worthy of veneration. Third, the investment of labor. Building Göbekli Tepe required enormous effort, with no immediate material return. People do not invest thousands of hours moving 10-ton stones unless the payoff is significant. In this case, the payoff was not food, shelter, or defense. It was something intangible: religious fulfillment, social cohesion, cosmic alignment. The very act of building may have been part of the ritual, a way of demonstrating devotion and creating sacred space. Fourth, the feasting remains. The concentration of animal bones in the enclosure fills, the evidence of butchering and consumption, the sheer quantity of meat represented, all point to large communal meals. Feasting is a universal human practice with both social and religious dimensions. It creates bonds, reinforces hierarchy, and often accompanies rituals. At Gobekli Tepe, feasting seems to have been integral to the site's function. The physical evidence found at the site offers clues about what kind of religion did it serve. The animal carvings suggest a religion focused on the natural world, on the spirits or powers embodied in wild creatures. This is consistent with what anthropologists call animism, the belief that animals, plants, and natural phenomena possess spiritual essence or agency. Many hunter-gatherer societies have animistic religions, where animals are seen as kin, teachers, or powerful beings who must be respected and propitiated. The prominence of dangerous animals, boars, snakes, big cats on the pillars supports this. These are creatures that could kill humans, that had to be approached with caution and respect. Their depiction at a sacred site may represent a form of sympathetic magic or ritual control, an attempt to establish right relations with these powerful beings. The vultures carved on several pillars are particularly suggestive. Vultures are carrion birds associated with death and the disposal of corpses. In some ancient cultures, including later Neolithic communities in Anatolia, the dead were exposed to vultures in a practice called excarnation, the intentional defleshing of corpses before secondary burial. If this practice existed at Göbekli Tepe, the vulture carvings may represent the bird's role in the death ritual, mediating between the living and the dead. Some researchers, including Schmidt, proposed that Göbekli Tepe functioned as a mortuary site, a place where the dead were processed and honoured. The headless human figure on Pillar 43, the vulture stone, could represent a corpse being consumed by vultures. The circular enclosures could be spaces for funerary rituals, where the community gathered to mourn, feast, and send the dead into the next world. This interpretation is appealing but not conclusive. Human skeletal remains at Göbekli Tepe are scarce. A few bone fragments have been found, some modified, but there is no large cemetery, no evidence of systematic burial. If Göbekli Tepe was a mortuary site, the bodies were disposed of in ways that left little archaeological trace, excarnation being one possibility. Another interpretation focuses on astronomical alignments. Several researchers have analysed the orientation of the enclosures and the symbolism on the pillars, looking for connections to celestial phenomena. The argument is that Göbekli Tepe may have functioned as an observatory or a site for tracking seasonal changes, solstices, equinoxes, or the movements of specific constellations. The vulture stone has received particular attention in this regard. Some researchers identify the carved animals as representations of constellations, the vulture as Cygnus, the scorpion as Scorpius, the circle as the sun or a comet. They argue that the pillar records a significant astronomical event, possibly a comet impact or meteor shower around 10,900 BC that triggered the Younger Dryas cooling event. This hypothesis is controversial. While it is true that Göbekli Tepe's builders would have been aware of the night sky and the seasonal movements of stars, interpreting specific carvings as star maps requires assumptions about which animals correspond to which constellations, assumptions we cannot verify. The hypothesis also depends on dating the vulture stone to a period several hundred years earlier than the consensus dating for Göbekli Tepe's main construction phase. Most archaeologists remain skeptical of the astronomical interpretation, not because it is impossible, but because it is speculative. The evidence does not compel this reading, and simpler explanations that the carvings represent animals important in myth and ritual are equally plausible. A third interpretation emphasizes social function. Göbekli Tepe may have been a gathering place for dispersed hunter-gatherer groups, a site where they came together periodically to feast, trade, share information, arrange marriages, and resolve disputes. The monumental architecture served to mark the importance of the site, to create a sense of awe and shared identity, and to legitimize the authority of those who organized the gatherings. In this view, religion and ritual were tools for social cohesion. Building the enclosures, carving the pillars, and performing ceremonies at the site reinforced group bonds and created a shared sense of belonging. The effort invested in construction was a form of social capital, demonstrating the community's collective capability and commitment. This interpretation does not contradict the religious function. Social cohesion and religious belief are not mutually exclusive. Ritual often serves both purposes simultaneously. It connects people to the sacred and to each other. Gobekli Tepe could have been both a temple and a meeting ground, a place where the spiritual and the social were intertwined. The variety of interpretations reflects the fundamental problem of interpreting prehistoric sites. We have the physical remains, but not the context of meaning. The builders of Göbekli Tepe are not here to explain what they intended. We must infer from stones and bones, and those inferences are necessarily tentative. What we can say with confidence is that Göbekli Tepe was important. It was not built casually. It was not a side project. It was the focus of sustained effort over generations, involving hundreds of people and enormous resources. The people who built it believed it mattered. They invested labor, time, and creativity because the site fulfilled a need. Whether that need was religious, social, astronomical, or some combination we have not yet imagined. The burial of the enclosures around 8000 BC adds another dimension to the interpretation. Why bury something you worked so hard to build? Several possibilities exist. One is that the religious function of the site changed or ended. Perhaps the beliefs that motivated the construction shifted, making the old enclosures obsolete. Rather than abandon them to decay, the community chose to bury them respectfully, preserving them but marking the end of their active use. Another possibility is that the burial was itself a ritual. Perhaps the enclosures were always meant to be temporary, to be built, used for a specific period or purpose, and then closed. The cycle of construction and burial may have been part of the religious practice, a way of marking time or enacting mythological narratives. A third possibility is that social or environmental changes made maintaining the site unsustainable. By 8000 BC, the region was beginning to see the development of agriculture and permanent settlements. The mobile hunter-gatherer lifestyle that supported Gobekli Tepe may have been giving way to a more sedentary existence. The site's function as a regional gathering place may have diminished as communities settled in fixed locations. We do not know which of these explanations, if any, is correct. But the burial itself is a significant act, one that tells us the people who closed Gobekli Tepe did so with intention and care. Gobekli Tepe, then, resists simple interpretation. It was a temple, a gathering place, a site for feasting and ritual, possibly a mortuary center, possibly an astronomical observatory, certainly a place of symbolic and social importance. It served multiple functions, changed over time, and meant different things to different people. What it demonstrates, beyond any specific interpretation, is that early humans had complex inner lives. They thought about death, the cosmos, the spirits of animals, the bonds of community, and the nature of the sacred. They expressed these thoughts in stone, creating monuments that have outlasted their creators by 10,000 years. Gobekli Tepe changes how we understand the origins of civilization. For most of the 20th century, the standard model for human development went like this. Agriculture enabled settlement, settlement enabled surplus production, surplus enabled specialization, specialization enabled complex society, and complex society eventually produced monumental architecture and organized religion. The sequence was agricultural revolution first, everything else second. This model came from the archaeological record as it was understood in the mid-1900s. The earliest cities, places like Jericho, Çatalhöyük, and the Mesopotamian settlements, appeared in regions where agriculture had already been established. The earliest monumental structures, the ziggurats of Sumer, the step pyramids of Egypt, were built by agricultural societies with established hierarchies and specialized labor forces. The correlation seemed clear. Farming made civilization possible. Gordon Childe, one of the most influential archaeologists of the 20th century, formalized this model in his concept of the Neolithic revolution. He argued that the domestication of plants and animals was the pivotal transformation in human history, the event that allowed everything else to follow. Before agriculture, humans lived in small mobile bands, barely surviving, with no time or resources for art, religion, or architecture beyond the most basic. After agriculture, they had the leisure and the surplus to develop culture. Gobekli Tepe demonstrates that this model is incomplete. Here we have monumental architecture, sophisticated art, organized labor, and clear evidence of complex religious or ritual activity, all built by people who were still primarily hunter-gatherers. The site predates the full adoption of agriculture in the region by at least 1,000 years. The people who built Gobekli Tepe were not settled farmers. They were mobile groups who came together periodically to work on these structures and to participate in whatever rituals the site demanded. This inverts the assumed sequence. At Gobekli Tepe, the temple came before the village. Ritual architecture preceded domestic architecture. Religion, or something like it, was already driving large-scale social organization before agriculture was fully established. Klaus Schmidt argued that Gobekli Tepe might represent the birthplace of agriculture. His hypothesis was this: the need to support large gatherings at ritual sites created pressure to increase food production. Wild grains and game could support periodic feasts. But if gatherings became more frequent or larger, the surrounding resources would be strained. This pressure, Schmidt suggested, might have driven people to begin cultivating wild grains and managing animal populations more intensively, eventually leading to full domestication. In this model, religion did not follow from agriculture. Religion drove it. The need to gather for ritual purposes created the conditions that made farming advantageous. The spiritual preceded the economic. This hypothesis is speculative, and not all archaeologists accept it. The relationship between ritual sites like Gobekli Tepe and the origins of agriculture is still debated. But the broader point stands: complex social and religious organization existed before the full development of agriculture. The old model, which placed agriculture as the necessary first step, no longer holds. The implications extend beyond agriculture. The site demonstrates that hunter-gatherers were capable of far more social complexity than previously assumed. The old stereotype of small egalitarian bands living hand-to-mouth with no time for anything beyond survival does not fit the evidence. The builders had social hierarchies, recognized leaders, long-distance trade networks, and the ability to mobilize labor for projects that had no immediate material benefit. This challenges the evolutionary framework that assumed social complexity increased in a linear fashion from simple to complex, from egalitarian bands to hierarchical chiefdoms to centralized states. Gobekli Tepe shows that complexity could exist at earlier stages in forms that do not fit neatly into these categories. Hunter-gatherer societies were not uniformly simple. Some developed forms of social organization and cultural expression that rivaled later agricultural societies. The discovery also has implications for understanding religion. For much of the 20th century, scholars assumed that organized religion, temples, priesthoods, codified rituals, emerged only with settled agricultural societies. Religion among hunter-gatherers was thought to be informal, based on shamanism and personal spiritual experience, without the institutional structures seen in later civilizations. Gobekli Tepe suggests otherwise. Here we have what appears to be organized religion 12,000 years ago. Monumental sacred architecture, standardized iconography, large-scale ritual gatherings, and the coordination required to build and maintain the site. This is not informal shamanism. This is institutionalized religious practice, with sufficient authority and social cohesion to sustain construction over generations. If organized religion existed among hunter-gatherers, it likely existed elsewhere as well. Gobekli Tepe may not be unique, but rather the best preserved example of a broader pattern. Other similar sites have been discovered in the region, collectively known as the Taş Tepeler, or Stone Hills. These include Karahan Tepe, Harbetsuvan Tepesi, and several others, all featuring T-shaped pillars and circular enclosures, all dating to roughly the same period. The existence of multiple sites suggests that Gobekli Tepe was part of a regional tradition, a shared cultural practice that extended across southeastern Anatolia. The style of architecture, the use of T-shaped pillars, the iconography of wild animals, all recur across these sites, indicating a common set of beliefs or practices. This was not the work of a single community, but a widespread cultural phenomenon. The Taş Tepeler sites are still being excavated, and much remains unknown. But their existence reinforces the point. The Pre-Pottery Neolithic was a period of considerable cultural and religious innovation. A third possibility is that the social and religious institutions developing in the Pre-Pottery Neolithic created demand for predictable food supplies. If communities were gathering regularly at sites like Göbekli Tepe, they needed to provision those gatherings. Wild resources might suffice for small or infrequent gatherings. But as the tradition grew, cultivated grains and managed herds became advantageous. The transition to agriculture was not a single event, but a long, gradual process that unfolded over thousands of years. Gobekli Tepe sits at the beginning of this process, at a moment when people were experimenting with new forms of social organization, when they were beginning to manipulate their environment more intensively, but before they had committed fully to farming. The site thus represents a hinge point in human history, a moment when the old ways were still dominant, but the seeds of the new ways were already being planted. The builders of Gobekli Tepe were still hunter-gatherers, but they were hunter-gatherers on the verge of a transformation. The implications extend to our understanding of human motivation. Why do people build monuments? Why do they invest enormous effort in projects that do not directly feed, shelter, or protect them? The traditional answer was that surplus enabled such projects. Only when people had extra food and extra time could they afford to build temples and monuments. But Gobekli Tepe suggests the causation runs, or can run the other way. This suggests that human motivations are not purely material. People are driven by ideas, by beliefs, by the desire to create meaning and express devotion. The builders of Gobekli Tepe were not responding to economic incentives. They were responding to something deeper, a vision of the sacred, a need to gather, a drive to create something permanent in a world of constant change. The old narrative of human progress, from primitive to civilized, from simple to complex, does not survive contact with Gobekli Tepe. Human history is not a straight line. It is a series of experiments, innovations, and adaptations, some of which succeed and some of which are abandoned. This site represents one such experiment, a form of social and religious organization that flourished for over 1,000 years and then intentionally closed and buried, its lessons preserved in stone for us to rediscover 10,000 years later. Gobekli Tepe has captured public imagination in ways that few archaeological sites do. Its age, its scale, and the questions it raises about early human civilization make it inherently compelling. Unfortunately, this same appeal has also attracted considerable pseudoscientific speculation. The fringe theories surrounding Gobekli Tepe fall into several categories: claims of lost advanced civilizations, assertions of ancient alien involvement, misrepresentations of the archaeological evidence, and conspiracy theories about archaeologists supposedly hiding the truth. These ideas spread rapidly on the internet, in documentaries, and in popular books, often reaching far larger audiences than the careful, evidence-based work of actual archaeologists. It is worth addressing these claims directly, not to mock those who believe them, but to clarify what the evidence actually shows, and to demonstrate why the legitimate story of Göbekli Tepe is more interesting than any invented mystery. One common assertion is that Göbekli Tepe was built by a lost advanced civilization that existed before known history, possessed sophisticated technology, and vanished, leaving only a few mysterious monuments. This civilization is sometimes identified with Atlantis or other legendary places. The argument goes, since we thought people 12,000 years ago could not build such structures, the existence of this site proves there must have been an earlier, more advanced civilization that we know nothing about. This reasoning is faulty from the start. The premise that people 12,000 years ago could not build Göbekli Tepe is wrong. They demonstrably could, and they did. We know this because we have found the quarries where they cut the stone, the tools they used to shape it, and the debris from the construction process. Everything at Göbekli Tepe can be explained by organized labor using Stone Age technology. Moving a 10-ton stone does not require advanced technology. It requires ropes, wooden sledges, levers, and enough people pulling together. Carving limestone does not require power tools. It requires stone hammers, flint chisels, and time. There is nothing that exceeds the capabilities of intelligent, organized humans using the tools available in the Pre-Pottery Neolithic. The existence of this site does not prove we were wrong about human capabilities 12,000 years ago. It proves we had underestimated them. That is an important distinction. We now understand that hunter-gatherers in favorable environments could organize complex projects. This expands our understanding of the past. It does not require inventing a fictional civilization to explain it. Moreover, if an advanced civilization had built all of this, where is the evidence of that civilization? Advanced societies leave extensive archaeological traces, large settlements, infrastructure, specialized tools, trade networks, and usually writing or other complex communication systems. None of this exists at Göbekli Tepe or anywhere in the surrounding region during this period. The artifacts found at the site are consistent with a pre-pottery Neolithic culture. A subset of the lost civilization theory attributes Göbekli Tepe to extraterrestrial visitors. The logic is similar. Ancient humans supposedly could not have built this, therefore aliens must have done it or taught them how. This claim is not worth extended discussion. It rests on the false premise that humans were incapable of building Göbekli Tepe, which we have already addressed. It also reflects a failure of imagination and a troubling condescension toward our ancestors. Humans 12,000 years ago were not intellectually inferior. They were people like us, with the same brains, the same capacity for creativity and problem-solving. They did not need alien assistance. They needed organization, motivation, and time, all of which they had. The site is impressive, but impressive is not the same as impossible. Some fringe theories claim that Göbekli Tepe is much older than 12,000 years, pushing the date back to 15,000, 20,000, or even further in the past. This is used to support arguments that the site was built during the last ice age by a now extinct civilization. The dating of this site is based on multiple radiocarbon measurements of organic materials found in stratigraphic context at the site. Charcoal, bone, and other carbon-bearing materials were extracted from the construction fills and from deposits associated with the use of the enclosures. These samples were dated using standard radiocarbon techniques, and the results are consistent. The main construction phase dates to approximately 9,600 to 8,200 BC. This dating is not speculative. It is not based on assumptions. It is based on measurable physical evidence. Radiocarbon dating works by measuring the decay of carbon-14 isotopes in organic material, a process that occurs at a known rate. The dates have been cross-checked using multiple samples and multiple laboratories. They are reliable. Claims of much greater age are not supported by evidence. They are based on misunderstanding the dating methods or on ignoring the actual data in favor of speculation. A more sophisticated but still controversial claim is that the carvings at Göbekli Tepe, particularly on Pillar 43, record a comet impact or meteor shower that occurred around 10,900 BC and triggered the Younger Dryas cooling event. Proponents argue that the animals carved on the pillar represent constellations, and the symbols record an astronomical disaster. This hypothesis has some scholarly proponents, and it has been published in peer-reviewed journals, so it occupies a different category than outright pseudoscience. However, the majority of archaeologists and astronomers remain skeptical. The problems with the hypothesis are several. First, it requires interpreting the animal carvings as constellation symbols, which demands knowing which animals correspond to which constellations, information we do not have. The assignment of specific animals to specific star groups is speculative. Second, the dating of Pillar 43 to 10,900 BC is not secure. The pillar is part of enclosure D, which dates to around 9,600 BC or slightly later. Third, there is no independent geological evidence of a major comet impact at 10,900 BC that would have caused the Younger Dryas event. The Younger Dryas did occur, and its causes are debated, but a comet impact is not the leading explanation among climate scientists. The hypothesis is not impossible, but it is not strongly supported by the evidence. It remains a minority position, and treating it as established fact, as some popular accounts do, misrepresents the state of the research. Another common theme in fringe theories is the assertion that archaeologists are hiding evidence that would overturn our understanding of history. The claim usually goes, Klaus Schmidt or other researchers found something shocking, proof of advanced technology, evidence of much greater age, artifacts that do not fit the accepted narrative, and concealed it to protect their careers or the established academic consensus. This is conspiracy thinking, and it does not withstand scrutiny. Archaeological research is conducted by multiple independent teams from different institutions and different countries. Gobekli Tepe has been excavated by German, Turkish, and international researchers, with findings published in academic journals subject to peer review. Thousands of artifacts have been catalogued. The site is open to scholarly inspection. If evidence contradicting the current interpretation existed, it would be published, debated, and incorporated into the scholarly consensus. Archaeologists do not have a vested interest in suppressing surprising findings. Quite the opposite. Discovering something unexpected is how researchers make their reputations. Klaus Schmidt's career was built on revealing that Göbekli Tepe was far older and more significant than anyone expected. He had every incentive to report what he found accurately, and he did. The idea that archaeologists are hiding the truth is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how science works. Science is competitive. Researchers want to be the ones who make new discoveries and challenge old models. The system rewards innovation, not conformity. If there were evidence of a lost civilization or ancient aliens at Gobekli Tepe, multiple researchers would be racing to publish it, not collaborating to suppress it. The actual story is more remarkable than any of the fringe theories. We do not need lost civilizations to explain it. We do not need aliens. We need only to recognize that our ancestors were capable of organizing, planning, and creating on a monumental scale 12,000 years ago. They were motivated by beliefs we can only partially reconstruct, by a vision of the sacred that drove them to move massive stones and carve intricate images into their surfaces. They did this as mobile hunter-gatherers, before the advent of farming, before permanent cities, before writing. That is the actual mystery. Not where they got their technology, but what compelled them to use the technology they had in this way. Not whether they could build sites like this, but why they chose to build it. Not whether the site records an ancient disaster, but what religious or social needs it fulfilled for the communities who gathered there. These are questions worth asking, questions that lead to genuine insight into human nature and human history. The fringe theories, by contrast, short-circuit inquiry. They replace investigation with assertion, evidence with speculation, and the difficult work of understanding the past with comforting fantasies about lost golden ages or external intervention. Göbekli Tepe does not need embellishment. It does not need to be older than it is or built by anyone other than the people who actually built it. The site is significant because it was built by hunter-gatherers using Stone Age tools, because it challenges our assumptions about what was possible in the pre-pottery Neolithic, because it forces us to reconsider the origins of complex society and organized religion. When we strip away the pseudoscience, what remains is the truth. 12,000 years ago, on a hill in southeastern Turkey, people who lived by hunting and gathering came together to create something monumental. They had no written instructions, no blueprints, no precedent. They had their hands, their tools, their social bonds, and their vision of the sacred, and that was enough. Despite nearly 3 decades of excavation, Gobekli Tepe remains largely unknown. Less than 5% of the site has been uncovered. The majority of the structures lie buried beneath the hill, detected by geophysical surveys, but not yet excavated. What we understand about the site comes from a small sample, and that sample may not be representative of the whole. The unexcavated portions could contain structures different from those already revealed. They could provide evidence that changes current interpretations. They could answer questions that remain open or raise entirely new ones. Until more of the site is exposed, our understanding remains provisional. Several major questions have no clear answers. Who exactly built it? We know the builders were pre-pottery Neolithic hunter-gatherers living in the region around 9,600 to 8,200 BC. But we do not know their ethnic or linguistic identity. We do not know what they called themselves. We do not know their origin stories or their myths. The archaeological record tells us what they did and what they made, but it does not tell us who they were in their own terms. We also do not know the extent of their territory. Did the people who built it range across the entire region of southeastern Anatolia, or were they concentrated in a smaller area? Were they a single cultural group, or did multiple groups with different identities collaborate on the site? The evidence of long-distance trade, obsidian from central Anatolia, shells from the Mediterranean, indicates connections across hundreds of kilometers, but we do not know how those connections were organized or maintained. What language did they speak? This question is unanswerable with current evidence. Language leaves no direct archaeological trace unless it is written down, and writing did not exist in 9,600 BC as far as the current evidence goes. Linguistic reconstruction can sometimes trace language families back several thousand years, but not 12,000 years. The people who built Göbekli Tepe spoke one language, or perhaps multiple languages, but we will never know what they sounded like or what words they used for the things they built. What were the rituals performed at the site? We can infer that rituals took place. The architecture, the iconography, the feasting remains all point to ceremonial activity, but we do not know the details. What did people do when they gathered at the site? Did they dance, sing, chant, or perform sacrifices? Did they enter the enclosures alone or in groups? Were there initiation rites, seasonal festivals, or funerary ceremonies? The lack of written sources means these questions remain speculative. Comparative ethnography can suggest possibilities. Many cultures perform rituals involving feasting, animal symbolism, and sacred architecture. But analogies are not evidence. We are left with the physical remains and our imagination. What do the animal carvings mean? The animals depicted on the pillars clearly had symbolic significance. But what did they represent? Were they totems of different clans or groups? Were they spirits or deities? Were they characters in myths? Were they representations of constellations or seasonal markers? Different researchers have proposed different interpretations, but none can be confirmed. The selection of animals is not random, and the repetition of certain species across multiple pillars suggests a coherent symbolic system. But without texts or surviving oral traditions, we cannot decode that system. The carvings remain eloquent but mute. Why was the site buried? Around 8000 BC, the enclosures at the site were filled with debris and covered. The pillars were left standing, the carvings preserved. The work was done carefully, suggesting intentionality rather than abandonment or destruction. But why? Several possibilities exist. The religious function of the site may have changed, making the old enclosures obsolete. The burial may have been part of a closing ritual, a way of marking the end of one phase and the beginning of another. Social or environmental changes may have made maintaining the site impractical. We do not know which explanation is correct, or whether some other factor we have not considered was responsible. The burial preserved Göbekli Tepe for modern discovery, but it also erased the context that would explain why it was done. What is buried in the unexcavated areas? Geophysical surveys indicate at least 20 circular enclosures beneath the surface, along with other architectural features that have not yet been identified. These structures may be similar to the excavated enclosures, or they may be different. Some may be larger, some smaller. Some may contain different iconography, or serve different functions. The decision to leave most of the site unexcavated is deliberate. Archaeological techniques improve over time. What can be learned from an excavation today may be only a fraction of what could be learned in 50 or 100 years, with better methods, better dating techniques, better analytical tools. By leaving the majority of Göbekli Tepe untouched, current researchers are preserving it for future generations who will be better equipped to study it. This is sound practice, but it means we are working with incomplete information. The interpretations we construct now may be overturned by future discoveries. What seems clear based on the excavated enclosures may turn out to be only part of a larger, more complex picture. How many people were involved in the construction? Estimates of the labor required to build the site vary. Moving a 10-ton pillar might require 50 to 100 people. Carving the reliefs might take weeks or months per pillar. Constructing a single enclosure could involve several thousand person-hours of work. But how those hours were distributed across time and population is unclear. Did large groups gather periodically for intense construction efforts? Or did smaller groups work steadily over years? Were the same people involved in quarrying, transporting, and carving? Or were these tasks specialized? The population of the region is also uncertain. Estimates range from a few hundred to a few thousand people within a day's walk of Göbekli Tepe. The higher the population, the easier it would be to mobilize labor. But we do not have firm numbers. The archaeological evidence of surrounding settlements is sparse, which could mean either that the population was small or that the settlements were ephemeral and difficult to detect. What was the relationship between Göbekli Tepe and other sites in the region? The discovery of other Taş Tepeler sites, Karahan Tepe, Harbetsuvan Tepesi, and others, indicates that Göbekli Tepe was not unique. These sites share architectural features, particularly the use of T-shaped pillars and circular enclosures, suggesting a common cultural tradition. But what was the relationship among these sites? Were they built by the same communities or by different groups sharing a religious tradition? Was Göbekli Tepe the first, serving as a model for the others? Or were they all part of a contemporaneous network? Did they serve different functions? Or were they all ritual centers with similar purposes? These questions are only beginning to be addressed. Excavations at the other Taş Tepeler sites are ongoing, and the data are still being analyzed. As more information becomes available, we may gain a clearer picture of the regional context. What role did Göbekli Tepe play in the development of agriculture? Klaus Schmidt proposed that the need to support gatherings at the site may have driven the intensification of food production, eventually leading to agriculture. This hypothesis is plausible but not proven. The transition to agriculture in the Near East was a long, complex process involving multiple factors: climatic changes, population growth, social organization, and technological innovation. The site sits at the beginning of this transition, at a time when people were experimenting with wild grain cultivation and animal management, but had not yet committed fully to farming. Whether Göbekli Tepe was a cause, an effect, or simply coincident with the agricultural transition is still debated. The site clearly demonstrates that complex social and religious organization could exist before full agriculture, but whether it actively drove the shift to farming remains an open question. How long was the site in use? The main construction phase at the site lasted from approximately 9,600 to 8,200 BC, a span of 1,400 years. But this does not mean the site was in continuous use throughout that period. Construction may have occurred in phases, with periods of intense activity followed by periods of abandonment or low-level use. The stratigraphy suggests multiple building episodes, with older enclosures being filled and new ones constructed on top. This indicates a long tradition of use and modification, but the details of that tradition, how often people gathered, for how long, and for what purposes, remain unclear. What happened to the people who built it? After the site was buried around 8000 BC, the region continued to be inhabited. The pre-pottery gave way to the pottery Neolithic, and agriculture gradually became the dominant subsistence strategy. Villages grew into towns. New forms of social organization emerged. The descendants of the people who built it were presumably part of this process, but we cannot trace a direct line. Cultural continuity in prehistory is difficult to establish. People change, migrate, intermarry, and adopt new practices. The communities that built Göbekli Tepe may have evolved into the later farming societies of the region, or they may have been absorbed, displaced, or transformed beyond recognition. Will we ever have definitive answers? Some questions about Göbekli Tepe will likely remain unanswered. Without written sources, we cannot recover the myths, languages, or belief systems of the builders. Without time travel, we cannot observe the rituals or social interactions that took place at the site. But archaeology is not static. New techniques, improved dating methods, isotopic analysis, ancient DNA extraction, advanced geophysical imaging continue to be developed. Each new tool provides information that was previously inaccessible. What seems unknowable today may be knowable in 20 or 50 years. The excavation will continue for decades, perhaps centuries. Each season of work adds data, refines interpretations, and sometimes overturns previous assumptions. For now, what we have is enough. We have stone pillars standing where they were placed 12,000 years ago. We have carvings of animals rendered with skill and care. We have the remains of feasts, the debris of construction, the tools used to shape the stone. We have evidence of organized labor, of social hierarchy, of long-distance connections, of a worldview that placed ritual and religion at the center of communal life. We have proof that our ancestors, long before they built cities or wrote laws or forged metal, were already creating monuments to something beyond themselves. They were already asking the questions that humans have always asked. What is sacred? How do we honor it? How do we come together as a community? Göbekli Tepe is their answer, carved in stone, preserved for 10,000 years, and now slowly being revealed to a world that thought it knew the limits of early human achievement. We were wrong about those limits. Göbekli Tepe proves it.